Okay, let's get started with welcome to Legal Talks Jurisprudence Delegated Legislation. So, in today's session, we'll be looking at delegated legislation, talk 6. So, legislation is basically when power is transferred from a primary source to a secondary source, or from a primary uh, organization or a sovereign to ensure good quality work. Certain authority or certain powers are delegated or passed on to a local authority. Okay, so that's what delegated legislation is. So let us look at the basic what maybe the definition or what may be said about delegated legislation. Delegated legislation is a type of law made by executive authority. So who makes the law? The law is made by the executive authority. Okay. As per the power conferred. Now, to make a law, anyone cannot make a law as they like. There should be a source. Okay. And that should be from an authoritative or authorized source. So, a power has to be conferred. They have to be assigned, they have to be given certain power, okay, by the primary authority in order to execute, implement, and administer the requirements of the primary authority. Like, what is a delegated legislation is, like, for example, you take parliament. So, what happens in a parliament? A bill is passed. Now, when a bill is passed, so there may be many aspects of the bill that cannot be implemented only on the face value. So a lot of groundwork has to be done. Now, who has to do this groundwork? Another executive authority has to do the groundwork. Now, without any powers, can they turn the ground reality? Can they fulfill the bill that has been passed in the parliament? Okay, so it's not possible. So what parliament does is parliament endorses, parliament confers certain powers to an executive authority, so that whatever the objective of that bill that was passed in the parliament is takes its shape or is implemented to its core. Okay, so once again, I repeat, delegated legislation is a type of law made by the executive authority as per the power conferred to them by the primary authority in order to execute, implement, and administer the requirements of the primary authority. Okay, so it is a law made by any person or authority under the power of parliament. So, what is the basic condition here? In order to delegate legislation, any anyone on the moon, under the moon, can under the sky cannot delegate the power. Only people in power, okay, like parliamentarians can do, ministers can do. Okay, and it should be through proper channel. Okay, it is referred, so since power is delegated, it is also referred as subordinate legislation and administrative law, or in administrative law it is also referred as subordinate legislation. Okay, now let us move a little further into the topic. What it does, basically it allows the bodies beneath the primary authority. Primary authority, who is the primary authority here? Here the parliament is the primary authority, or any other body which is trying to implement an act, and the delegated legislation works under such primary authority or legislature to make laws according to requirement through an act of parliament. Okay, now it has to be regularized, it has to be properly endorsed, and it has to be properly authorized. Then only a delegated legislation comes into existence, and it allows the state government to amend the laws if there is any need without delaying for the new act to be passed by the parliament. Now, in some cases, it happens that a bill that has been passed in the parliament may not hold good for all the states, creating a dire situation where the law has to be amended. And in such situations, again, the state government cannot wait for the central government or for the parliamentary session to once again amend the bill, and it will be too late for the state government. So, here, legislation plays an important role in bringing in the necessary changes without delaying the process. Ultimately, what is needed is the help, or the needed help for the common man should reach as early as possible, and this is quite achievable with delegated legislature. Next, it further enables a person or authority to provide more detail to the act of the parliament. Now, sometimes the terminology or the technical concepts that are coded in the parliamentary bill may be above a common man, about the intervention or about the understanding of a common man. Now, here also a delegated legislation plays a major role in breaking down those technical concepts or technical terminology into simplified things so that it reaches to the core of humanity, it reaches to the end needs of a common man. And again, finally, it is the need of the common man that has to be always kept in mind. And here, delegated legislation plays a major role in saying that the help reaches the common man. Moving on further, delegated legislation plays a vital role. Vital means very, very important role. Why? As it discharges more roles than the parliament. Now we know pretty well that this parliament sessions will be very busy, or there'll be many bills to be passed. A lot of debate goes on. Okay, and there are many issues to be discussed. Okay, so it will be very hectic, it will be very busy parliamentary sessions. Okay, now when it comes to implementation, it is again the delegated legislation that comes in to action or plays a major role in discharging all the activities, or in saying that if there are some sort of amendments to be done, so those amendments can be easily carried on uh, with the approval from the regulatory bodies, and the work is ensured that the work continues without any hindrance. It has the legal standing as the act of parliament from which it is created. So legal standing, it is legal standing. What does the word legal standing mean here? So legal standing means it is here it is referring to the approvals. Okay, the needed approvals or allotted authority is given to this delegated legislation. Without a proper authority, without a proper powers, obviously the delegated legislation cannot do anything, cannot go ahead uh, to serve the purpose. So it has a valid standing of a parliament from which it is created. The parliament does not have, okay, now when we talk about a parliament session, So what happens in a parliament session is many bills happen, many debates go on at a time. So sometimes, like, though all the works are given equal importance, all the bills are given equal importance, sometimes there may not be a sufficient time, okay, to debate on all the minute uh, issues of a particular act or a particular bill. So such issues or such uh, minor differences can be resolved with the help of a delegated legislation. Okay, so that can address to each and every aspect of the bill or the act that has been put forward in the parliament. Further, delegated legislation helps in making laws rapidly than parliament. So sometimes the parliamentary procedure may be complicated. So it is a rigorous process. So it has to be undergone by different stages. Then finally it takes up the shape of desired act or bill. Now, when same work is being designated to delegated legislation, it can be effectively done. So the effectiveness is manifold increased and the work is also carried on very faster, sorry. And it is also believed that members of parliament does not possess technical ability to make a law. So sometimes a policy that has been framed, a policy that has been taking shape as an act or bill in a parliament may not, uh, the parliamentarians or the ministers formulating such an act may not necessarily have all the technical knowledge, legal knowledge related to it. Now, here, a body that is delegated with legislation can play a major role in ensuring that the bill turns out or comes out in the perfect way as the legislatures or ministers of the parliament want it to be. Okay, now rules framed which violate the a parent act or illegal. Now, here there are few things that have to be kept in mind and have to be focused a lot. Any rule which violates, means which is against, which is not following the parent act, will be void. Okay, well, it will become illegal. Okay, rules framed which violate the statute act or void. Now, if something goes against the statute, that is also considered as void. It cannot be uh, existing. It cannot be considered valid in terms of legal world. Delegated legislation made with malified intention is also considered illegal. Okay. Now, if a delegated legislation is formed and the primary intentions of such delegated legislation that was formed was on uh, negative or was on causing harm or doing some bad with an intention of with a bad intention, then that is also considered to be illegal. Moving on further, the local authority can understand the needs of the people in his more effectively than others. Now, when we talk about the needs here, okay, now the local authority, because the local authority here stays very close to the human common man, and they pretty well know the needs of the common man than the higher authority or than the people sitting in the parliament. The people sitting in the parliament may not necessarily have all the basic inputs. So they may talk about the issue in terms of numbers, but a person working in that area may not only talk about the numbers, he may replicate, he may put up exact picture of what is happening in that place. So it helps. The local authorities can help a lot here because they understand the issue and they will definitely do all the possible to see that the law prevails in all sectors. It is controlled by parliament and judiciary. Obviously, once a power is delegated to a legislation, an authority is formed. An authority will not be given 100% freedom. They cannot act as they like. Definitely, they will be under the radar. They'll be under the complete surveillance of parliament and judiciary. And again, Parliament has overall control over the delegated legislation as it takes into account the statutory committees which make the law through bills. Now, here there is a very clear indication of accountability. So, everyone is accountable, and especially when the work is related with to a common man, so they have to be more careful. So everything is accountable, everything has to be properly documented and recorded to produce the necessary evidence in the in the hour of need. Now let us look at one of a case that is related with delegated legislation. In the landmark case of Narendra Kumar versus Union of India, it was held by the Honorable Supreme Court that the provision under Section 3(5) of the Essential Commodities Act 1955, which explains that any rules framed under the Act must be presented before both the houses of the Parliament. So, in this case, the Supreme Court has made it very clear, okay, which was mentioned in the Commodities Act under Section 3.5 of 1955, that whenever any rules are framed, such rules have to be passed or such rules have to be presented in both the houses of the Parliament. In Chandrabhan's case, it was held that the delegation of legislation must be reasonable and should not suffer from any unreasonableness. Now, whenever a power is authorized or whenever a power is endorsed to a delegated authority, it should be on reasonable grounds and it should be free from any sort of errors. Okay, so, because power corrupts, power in the wrong hands may do more harm than good to the common man. So, we can talk about delegated legislation or we can further divide this delegated legislation into three forms. So, one is statutory instrument, it is a statutory instrument. Two, it is order in council. Okay, order in council. And the third one is bylaws. Now, when we talk about statutory instrument, okay, so basically statutory instruments are formed by the government. Okay, like for example, a parent act is an act which permits the parliament for making the law. and such patent parent act will become a statutory instrument. Moving on further, orders in council. Orders in council are generally made by the government when there is a need, and when it can affect the public at large as well as the individual. So in such circumstances, order in council are framed. Then moving on further, the third form is bylaws. Now, basically, bylaws are created by the local authority, which is approved by the central government. There are many reasons for the delegation of a legislature. The parliament does not have that much time to deliberate and debate about every topic. So, thus we have discussed earlier also. Okay, factors that are responsible for the rapid growth of delegated legislation. Okay, so one major factor is pressure on parliament. Okay, now there are many bills to be passed, and there has to be a lot of groundwork to be done before the bill has to be passed. Now, all the work cannot be done in a stipulated time. So here it creates a situation where there is rapid need for delegated legislation. Technicality. Now, as we have discussed earlier also, all the parliamentarians, though they are representatives of the public, they may not necessarily understand the technicalities or legal issues or the procedures that have to be formulated or that have to be followed. Okay, and here also it becomes important or essential to delegate to form a delegated legislation to speed up the work. Flexibility. Okay, now flexibility. Now, if a law has been formed, an act has been brought into existence. Okay, now amending such act in again the parliamentary section a parliamentary session is a slow process. It's a time consuming process. Other alternative is to go for an delegated legislation which works on the issue and gives gives a reasonable solutions, and that's how it extends flexibility and ensures smooth flow of work of a nation. Okay, urgent. In some circumstances, a lot of work has to be done. Okay, it is a situation where immediately a decision has to be done. In that dire situation, in that very threatful or very delicate situation, again, delegated legislation plays a major role. Okay, to handle or to have access or to get an urgent solution from for a big problem. Here again, a delegated legislation plays a major role. Moving on further, complexity of modern administration. So there is a quite change from traditional administration to modern administration. For instance, we are now almost moved from paper based administration to digital based administration. Now, in this scenario, in this process of transformation, in this process of shifting from paper based administration to digital administration, the complexities have also increased many folds. Like for instance, if you take a politician, okay, a seasoned politician who knows how to put across an act, okay, but the procedures have the act has been putting forward have totally changed because the procedures have been totally renovated, totally uh, advanced when compared to his times. So here the complexity of modern administration has also created a dire need for the power to be delegated to a legislation, or for the creation of a delegated legislation. So let us look at some of the advantages of delegated legislation. So first one is it saves legislature time. So most of the work that has been the time consuming work can be done very faster, and end results can be always ensured. And it also extends flexibility of doing the things with great accuracy, and the errors factor can also be minimized. Okay, so expert opinion. Now, seasoned authorities who have worked years together in a particular department can play a major role in extending their expert opinions as a part of delegated legislation. Okay, now we pretty well know that parliament sessions are very limited, and in the same sessions, the bills are discussed. There's a lot of debate on the existing bills, and there's also a lot of debate that goes on, especially when a bill is presented in a parliamentary session. Okay, now all the debate, all the basic things may not be time may not be sufficient to be discussed. Here again, delegated legislation plays a major role in solving or resorting this problem of time consideration. So used as an experimental basis. So if there is an issue, or if there is a particular solution that has been extended, so that solution can be properly looked up in all the possible directions with the help of a delegated legislation before it is given a final shape in the parliament. And it is generally resorted in emergency situation. So a dire situation where there is uh, no time to wait for the parliamentary session, because waiting for the parliamentary session and the bill to be enacted may cause more damage to the common man and to the nation. In such scenarios, so framing up or endorsing uh, responsibility or giving authority to a delegated legislation to come up with uh, a possible solution as early as possible is the bright solution that can be done in a dire or in a threatful situation. Now, whenever certain power is delegated to a legislation, so since they are the authorities in working in the delegated legislation will be experts, pioneers in their areas, they have good knowledge about the subject. So the things can be settled between two parties with proper examination, and they can extend a good solution that is in favor of both the parties. So, as any other concept, delegated legislation is also has got some areas that have been criticized. So, one criticism is a long wearing of executive control. Now, since delegated legislation works in a formal environment, it may require a series of approvals. Okay, now if it gets stuck up anywhere and the cycle of approvals, the work may not move very fast. It may stuck up for a longer duration than expected. Weekend legislative control executive. So mostly the part is controlled at the executive level, and still it as it works on the concept of hierarchy. So any lapses, any gaps between this hierarchy will also impede, will also create uh, a delay in getting the work done as expected. Now, always there is a risk that the delegated legislation may become a little liberal and may misuse the power, or they may get into the extent of making the laws which may not be in the favor of a common man. Opposes the rule of separation of power. Now, power, in whenever power is put in single hand, the risk factor of causing damage is many folds. So generally, it is considered that decentralization is the best way of getting the works done. Now, when power is delegated with one authority, it goes against the rule of separation, because one authority, though they are very careful, there is always a risk factor involved that some way or the other they may overlook one or the other concept, and that concept or that weaker area may become an issue in the long run. Another one is lack of relevant discussion before framing the law. Now, when it is a delegated legislation, though they are resourceable, they are knowledgeable, but always a work of high magnitude has to be delegated at a larger scale. Many strong minds have to work on the issue, then only possibly they will render a solution which is acceptable by one and all and which is in favor of the common man. And it is not in acceptance with principle of rule of law. Okay, so principle of rule of law, it is somehow against to this principle of rule of law. And the major drawback is it is not stable in nature, as it is influenced by political changes. Now, to understand this, like the government is formed by ABC political party, and to implement a certain act, this ABC political party will form a delegated legislation. Now, when the delegated legislation is working under the guidance of the new political party, so a unrestful situation may mostly arise in that particular state, and the government comes down, a new government, one more government comes in power. Now, whenever the government changes, the rules and regulations, the way the things are done, the way the things are handled are also mostly uh, affected. Okay, so whenever there's a political change, okay, the scenario have or what rights are given to the delegated legislation, okay, this and all will play a major role. They may not be able to discharge their rights because their powers may be reduced or their powers may be completely revoked by the new political party. So it brings in an instability situation. So thank you. That I hope the session was good and I had given you sufficient inputs at least to write a well-framed essay on delegated legislation. So I hope the session was good and would be of great help to you. Okay, please do like and share my good work with your near and dear ones, with your friends. Okay, and please do subscribe my channel. Thank you. Have a good day.